Hey there, it's Carrie Rhodes here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and a new card making video. Yes, I'm making shaker cards again, but this time I'm doing them so they are inlaid into the card and they're inspired by pumpkin spice. Yay! Let's jump into card number 1. We're going to create a pumpkin spice cupcake using this card builder die set, but we're only using the cupcake pieces and not making an actual card. So the cupcake liner I die cut from some pattern paper, the cake and the frosting from some off-white cardstock, and I'm going to use Copic markers to add color to them. So I want my cake to be a pumpkin flavored cake, pumpkin spice, right? And so I have some dark orange marker. The first one was YR18, and now I have E19 for my darkest color, which, by the way, this top part of the cupcake is going to be covered by the frosting. So I kind of have a little bit of space to play and get a feel for the look I'm going for and decide whether I want to make that darker area bigger. And then for the final touch, I'm using my markers to add some speckles, some dots of color, and that is going to help it give it that kind of crumb look that cake has. Yeah. Okay, for the frosting, now the die itself has indentations that it presses into the paper, and that is going to give me an area to shade with my E53 marker. I'm kind of going for like a caramel look for my frosting, maybe cream cheese caramel, I don't know. For the background, I am going to shade the edges with some white ink and this skinny little blending brush. Now it looks like I'm putting on a ton of ink, yeah, but go with me here because it is going to dry back lighter than it appears now, and it's going to have that really nice chalkboard look. Yeah, sure. So this paper, by the way, is 5.5 by 8.5. I actually turned it down to 5 1/4 by 8 1/4 to fit on my A9 sized card today. Now I brought in my Ripe Pumpkin cut and foil set. For the first card, I'm just going to use the cutting pieces and actually not even the face. So here you can see that nice frame. It's very detailed. And then we have a die that's going to cut out a solid pumpkin shape. That I am going to use to make my inlaid shaker window. So I need to lay out all my pieces and then I will cut my window based on where everything kind of is laid out. It gives me a visual reference. I also need to cut part of that cupcake because I'm going to have the pumpkin be in front of that. So there you can see that cut out, and the black glitter cardstock that I put down, that's kind of like the tabletop for my things to sit on. And you can see the cupcake liner has a little piece removed from it, and so I can now go ahead and glue that in place. I probably could have glued it in place beforehand. Not sure why I didn't, but it works to glue it in place afterwards also. So now I am adding glue around the back of my pumpkin. On the back side of the paper, this is where I'm going to attach my window sheet. Once that's in place, then I can add that detail pumpkin piece. And what I do is put on a really light layer of glue. I kind of wait a minute, let the glue set up just the tiniest bit, and then when you stick it to your window sheet, it's not going to squish out as much. I also found another scrap of that polka dotted paper and die cut just the stem so I could paper piece this in, so I had a cute little green stem on my pumpkin, just like that. Yeah. Okay, then for my background that's going to show behind my pumpkin, I took a piece of orange cardstock and I'm splattering it with some Distress Mica spray stains. Now this is from last year's release, but you know, use the stains that you have, or sprays, or some watercolor, or whatever you want to splatter on there, or don't splatter at all. You could put some pattern paper behind there. I just love splatter, so I had to add it in. All right, so there I added my cake and my frosting, and now I am ready to start building my shaker. So I like to create a reservoir using foam tape all the way around my shaker window, so none of my shaker bits can escape. I'm using these Fright shaker bits from Trinity stamps. They have sprinkles, they have little clay pumpkins and bats and moons in different colors. So I think it's just like really cute. I mean, so Halloween. And I like using that to add a little touch of Halloween on my card. I also added some seed beads to help that move around. Once the backing on the foam tape is removed, I can add my back panel to my card. And you can see I put plenty of foam tape around there, so the back is all one layer. And there is my little shaker. So cute. Okay, this is the Gourd-geous stamp set. It has a whole bunch of different pumpkins and gourds, plus a really cute sentiment, which I will be using on card number 2. And now it's time to color out these cute little pumpkins. So I wanted these to be little accents on my card. I actually end up stamping and coloring a third pumpkin, which I didn't do here, but it's one of those things, once you start making your card, you're like, oh, I could use another one of those, you know? The ideas come to you as you start creating. So just coloring these out very simply, and I know that you could maybe color this second tall one as a gourd, but I know that you can find tall pumpkins like this, especially if you like go to the pumpkin patch. You know, the ones that don't want to stand up very good. They're kind of hard to carve, but your child really wants it. Yeah, I am going to use that in place of a letter on my card today. This one is a little candy topper. For my cupcake, I'm going to give it even more of a candy look closer to the end, so stay tuned for that. But I thought it needed a little shadow, so it looked like it was kind of squished down into the frosting a little bit. All right, so I have my 2 alphabets here. This is like an embossed edge alphabet, and I have my graham cracker alphabet, my favorite. I love these little letters, so I can make custom sentiments on my cards. Yeah, so I did Hey There Pumpkin. I am going to pick up my letters once I have them arranged how I want with a piece of low-tack tape, add my glue, and by the way, even though my tape is low-tack, I actually like stuck it to my shirt to make it even more low-tack, and that way once the glue sets and the letters are adhered to the background, I can more easily peel that tape off. So if you get a little too much glue, you can dab it up with a paper towel, and you don't have to press down hard right away on your glued pieces. So there is my pumpkin slash letter U. I actually ended up cutting around that on the black line so it didn't have any white outline. I felt like it looked better for the wording that way. So now I can just peel off that tape and everything sticks down pretty good. I mean, I had a few spots I had to push back down, but you know, if you don't get your letters 100% perfect, that's okay. It's handmade. It's supposed to look like that. Okay, I have Magic Mirror confetti bits, so they have like this iridescent shine, but they're black. I thought they were really fun for this card to add an element of shine. They don't stand out too much on the black paper, but you know, I needed some embellishment because that's how I roll. I love embellishments on my card. I like shine, I like different textures, I like dimension, so I don't always want a card that's just paper. I love those extra things. Speaking of extra things, there's my extra pumpkin. And now let's make these pumpkins look a lot more like a little candy treat by adding some glaze to the top of them. And that's going to make them have this nice raised up shiny finish. And before they dry, I am going to take some kind of chunky glitter and just sprinkle that right into the glaze for a little bit of a sugared look. And I will do the pumpkin in the word pumpkin. I wasn't sure at first, but I will go back and add that. So you can see there what they look like dry with the glitter. I'm adding this to my A9 card. So you take an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock, score it down the middle, and fold it in half, and that gives you an A9 size card. You can order envelopes for these. I ordered mine from Amazon, and I think they're just fun to have a giant card. And plus then I have lots of room to make things like pumpkin spice cupcakes on the front with a shaker window. If you like shaker windows that are fun shapes, I actually have another video I will link at the end of this video. You can check out 3 other kinds of cards made with shaker windows. I have a balloon. I use this cupcake right here as an inlaid shaker window. So make sure you go and check that video out if you haven't seen it yet. I'll link it at the end of this one. Okay, let's move on to card number 2. I am going to make a pumpkin spice boba milk tea with this die set right here. There's a little tiny circle. That's my boba. Okay, watch for that. But first we're going to make the background using this Argyle stencil set. There's 3 stencils in this set. You're supposed to, ink blend with all of them, but I'm going to use mine just a tiny bit different today. So I have a light orange piece of cardstock. I've got my stencil taped on. This stencil is 9 inches by 6 inches. That's the same size as my paper, so I just kind of taped the 2 together on 4 sides to hold it together. Then I am bringing in Rusty Hinge, which is like a really good pumpkin spice color. Really good. And look how amazing it looks on this light orange paper. Okay, second color is Vintage Photo. Now, when I think of like a pumpkin spice tea, these are the kind of colors that I think of. So that is why I chose them, and I think it looks so fun. But we're going to add some more detail to this with some faux stitching. So this stencil right here is going to be my guide to add in some stitched lines. I'm just going to use a black Sharpie marker, and I want to go right through the center of the orange diamonds. I'm going to leave the brown ones as they are, kind of like with Argyle. Some have the stitching marks and some don't. So that's what I was going for. There is a die that you can use to pierce stitched lines into the paper that coordinates with these stencils. But with that, you want to do the stitching, like the die part first, and then your stenciling. I wanted this to just be black. So this is a way you can use that stencil to add that. And for the other direction, I just flipped my stencil over, or rotated it, and then it was in the right place to add the stitching going the other way. Now I just took my sponge dauber that had that Rusty Hinge ink on it. I didn't add any more ink and went around the edge to darken it up just a little bit. And by now the paper has been trimmed down to fit my card. When it was time to clean up the ink off of my glass mat, I decided, let's splatter let's splatter the background. Anytime I make a card that has a beverage on it, like coffee or tea or something, I always like to add a little splatter. So let's add some more. This is the Crooked Broomstick Distress Mica Spray, also from last year's release, but you got to use the things in your stash, right? Also, Trinity Stamps does have the newer colors in their shop, so I will link those for you below. But look how good that looks dried. It's like coppery, which is good because I'm going to use some copper foil in a moment. But first, how about some brown glitter foam? I'm going to use that as my little tabletop. So I'm just getting together the things I need for the front of my card so I can know where to put my shaker window. One of them is my cup. I use the 2 largest dies together to create like a cup frame. Now I'm putting things down where I want them to go so I know where to cut the window for my inlaid shaker. Yeah. So now I'm taping that die in place. I'm going to remove the foam at the bottom because it's thicker. I don't need that on there when I cut it. I just need to cut this window. I left the little vellum piece there because it was just easier, but I did actually rip it a little bit, but I'm going to fix that when I glue everything in place. So first I will glue down my brown glitter foam, which by the way is from the Spellbinder shop. And when I glue down my vellum piece, you can see I'm smoothing out the glue with my finger, spreading it out. And that helps so it doesn't show as much, the glue doesn't show as much through the vellum. So there's a little tip for you. It works really good for me in most instances. Even if a tiny bit shows, it's a tiny bit. Okay, so I have this strip of green. I wanted to create my own boba straw, and I just wanted to show you I taped it to my paper cutter so I could cut it and it wouldn't move. And I chose to make my boba straw 1/2 of an inch wide. Now there is a straw in this die set, but if you've had boba tea, you know you have to have a fat straw in order to get your boba to go up the straw. So that's why I created my own straw here. I put it where I wanted it to go, traced a little line, and so I knew kind of what angle I wanted to cut it at, but I cut it just above the line so I had a little bit of room to glue that in place behind my window sheet, which I just glued on. So I want the straw to appear as if it's in the cup, right? So I'm going to glue that down just like that. And I still have that extra piece of straw over there in the right corner. I'm going to use that on the front of the card. So my straw will look like it's not only inside the cup, but coming up out of the top. So I trimmed that down so it would be the length that I wanted. And then I can just tuck this behind that vellum because I didn't put the glue all the way up to the top. And there you can see my straw coming out of the cup. Now let's make some boba. I have a piece of craft cardstock I'm inking up with Vintage Photo. It's just easier to start with a colored piece of paper than white. Plus you kind of get the brown showing through so you don't have to put down as much ink. But if you've ever had boba, the boba balls themselves are shiny, they're wet. So I wanted to pour on some clear embossing powder and melt this so it was nicely raised up and shiny. It's going to make them a little bit thicker because these are my shaker elements, my own shaker elements made from paper. So I want there to be a little bit of weight to them, a little bit of thickness, and I want them to be shiny. I actually embossed that thing 3 times. We're going to set that aside, let it cool, and make the background for our tea. So I'm going to use those same colors I used on the front of the card, Vintage Photo and Rusty Hinge. I'm going to blend them together, and my tea is a milk tea. So it's tea with a little bit of milk in it. So I think the look of the Distress Oxide with the matte finish really gives it that kind of milky look. So of course I'm going to splatter it. Now this didn't show up a ton. It's very subtle. So I feel in this instance, if you are recreating this, you wouldn't necessarily have to do the splatter. Plus that it's not really splattery. Milk tea isn't. Okay, time to cut the boba. Here's what one boba looks like, but how many boba do you need in your tea? Well, I would be pretty upset if my boba tea did not have very much boba in it. Plus, what else do I have to do besides cut boba? Like laundry or something? Yeah. I cut out 24 pieces of boba. I then added my foam all around the back and laid my boba pieces in one at a time so they were the front of them was facing the front of the card. Added my background there, and these move around a little bit, not a lot. And you know what? I'm totally okay with that because I'm worried about them getting stuck together at the bottom and, you know, not looking a little bit like a shaker. So I was okay with them not moving too much. Now I'm going to put a lid on my boba, but if you are a boba drinker, you know they just put like a little thin piece of plastic that sticks to the rim of your cup and you like poke your boba straw through it. So it doesn't really have a lid per se, but I like the finished off look of that. Now it's time for some hot foiling. I brought back my Ripe Pumpkin Cut and Foil set. I wanted to hot foil that pumpkin because it's so cool. And I had just got this copper foil and it is gorgeous. So I'm going to use my quick trimmer here to cut out a piece of foil that is the same size as the paper I decided to hot foil on. So I'm going to have copper foil on orange paper. This is a darker orange than I chose for my background. While my glimmer hot foil system is heating up, I die cut some little vines for the top of that, also from the same set. And then it's time to hot foil. I put my plate face up, my foil face down, my cardstock on top of that. I put the plates on top that came with the glimmer system, pressed my timer. Once the timer goes off, about a minute later, you just remove that entire dock, run it through your die machine. I went very slow. You don't want it to jiggle around or the plate can move and you'll get double foiling. And then I ran it back towards me because this is a very solid plate. Then I can take that same solid shaped pumpkin die and die cut out my hot foiled pumpkin in copper foil. It's so gorgeous, but I wanted to add a little bit more dimension to it. So I have my Distress ink in Vintage Photo and I'm going to just dust a little bit more color on the edge of this. And if you get any ink on the foiling, that's okay. It resists the ink. Just wipe it right away. Okay, now I have some very thin excess foam from some foam dots, and I wanted my pumpkin just to stick up a tiny bit so it could sit upon that glittered foam at the bottom. So that was the perfect use of those. It kind of is garbage, but you got to save those things and use them, right? Waste not, want not. And then I added my little vines there behind the pumpkin for another touch of green on this card. I think the vines really make it. Okay, now it's time for my sentiment, the Hello Gorgeous. I am going to emboss that with white powder on this green paper, the same green I've used on the card. It's actually, I think, parsley cardstock from from Concord and Ninth. Really good color. So there it is being melted. I love embossed sentiments, and there's a coordinating die for this. So I will die cut that, pop it up right onto the front of my card, and that just pulls all the green pieces together. I have champagne and strawberries for my little, they're confetti pieces, and they are like the perfect coppery color for this card. So I added a few of those to finish it off, and I liked the pumpkins so much that I stamped on the inside of the first card. I did the same this time with my Distress Oxide Vintage Photo ink. Just a little something there at the bottom of the card. So there are my 2 inlaid shaker cards for today's video. I love making shakers and finding different ways to do them, and pretty much anytime I get a die set or a stamp set, one of my first thoughts is, what kind of shaker card can I make with this? So I don't know why. I love them, and I love finding new elements to put inside my shaker. You could probably use those strawberry and champagne confetti pieces as boba in that cup too, but I wanted it to be very like boba authentic. So anyways, I thank you so much for stopping by and letting me share my new shaker cards with you. I had so much fun making them, and I will be back again very soon with a new video just for you. So feel free to consider subscribing if you're new here, and I will see you on the next video. Happy stamping! Bye!